KEPSA Task Force. Thank you so much for being with us here today. And also we have here in studio Bill Okero, not new in the station. Many thanks for joining us here today. Bill Okero is a political economist. So to set the stage for this particular conversation today, we are privileged to have you here, Makalimuli, today because you're a member of the Budget and Appropriations Committee. And we're just looking at the figures from the report that this particular report did that was tabled today. And we have seen a 40.7 billion shillings increment. What really necessitated that?
Yeah, thank you so much for hosting us. My second name is Mulu, not Muli. So, you know, Muli and Mulu are totally two different names. So, as you said, I think, let me just break down the budget for you so that you can see where your 40 billion is coming from. Although I don't know whether it's 40 billion in terms of what, because when you look at the last year's budget, that is the 2024-2025, the one we're implementing, and the one which the minister has proposed of 4.2 trillion, the difference is not actually 40 billion, it's much more. But we have a budget of about 4.2 trillion. And the way you break it down is that out of that budget, the executive will be getting about 2.5. The counties will be getting about, that is 2.5 trillion. The counties will be getting 4 or 5 trillion. Equalization fund will get about 9.5 trillion. Then you have what we call the CFS, Consolidated Fund Services, which will get about 1.8. And that's what gives you a totality of that budget. The 40 billion you are talking about is actually what we call grants. It's the money we expect to get from our colleagues, development partners. Those are the grants. In terms of how it will be financed, and that's where the finance bill comes in, we have the finance bill, that is the own revenue, what we call ordinary revenue, which will generate about 2.7 trillion. Then you will have what we call A&A, appropriation in aid. This is the money you collect by selling services to Kenyans, goods and services. For example, when you go to get your title, you pay. That's what we call A&A. So that will give us about 570 billion. And then the country will be borrowing 878 billion. If you add that and then the 40 billion you're talking about of grants, then it will give you the total of 4.2 trillion. So basically, that's the way the budget, you break down the budget, and then the money for the executive will be shared to the ministries, departments and agencies, and it will be taking care of recurrent expenditure and what we call development expenditure. But when you analyze the budget, you realize that development expenditure is still a very low figure. It's actually about 700 billion, which is quite low. And the rest is recurrent expenditure, meaning taking care of salaries, fuel for cars.
But I'm just curious to know what were really some of the major concerns during the consideration when you're having the budget estimates. What were really the considerations? Yeah,
that's a very good question. And as we're looking at the budget, there are quite a number of concerns. And some of the concerns were arising from the fact that some key items had been left out. I'm sure you are aware, it was reported that we didn't have any money for examination, examination fee. So that omission was quite serious, bearing in mind that our kids will not be able to sit for exams, and looking at the time frames in terms of sitting for exams. So in this budget, we brought back a figure of 5.9 billion to take care of that fact. The other concern was the fact that the ASRA fund.
But allow me much more just to speak to, because this is a live coverage and we also have Kenyans talking to us. And we are lucky enough today, and Martha Karua, the People's Liberation Party leader, is on standby just to throw in her own views before we continue with this particular discussion today. We have Ngunjiri with us.
Thank you so much, Linda. And indeed, we are coming live to you, and I am joined by PLP leader Martha Karua, who is joining us in this conversation, even as we discuss about President William Ruto's budget 2025-2026. And thank you so much for joining us this evening. And what is your take about 2025-2026 budget?
I think that it is in a way worse than the 2024 budget and finance bill, which was rejected by the public. This year they are talking of zero budgeting, which is a political slogan, which means nothing. Because when you go to the budget, the expenditure does not match the revenue. Zero budgeting is looking at the revenue you have and matching the expenditure. And that is not what is happening. Zero budgeting also expects that every expenditure item has to be rationalized. And you'd expect more discipline, fiscal discipline, and prioritization of necessities. You have just heard that there was no money for examinations, for invigilation. It is now Parliament trying to allocate. But beyond that, there are items in that budget that are not rationalized at all. Yes. What is other expenses for State House, which are 2 billion plus? Nothing is called other expenses. It has to be itemized, rationalized. So you can see this budget is like any other budget, any other of the two budgets that the William Ruto administration has passed, which focuses on money expenditure for the big boys and not prioritizing the needs of the people, not even those that are under the Constitution, under Article 43, because education, health have to be budgeted for under Article 43 of the Constitution. These are ignored. I was looking at Parliament's budget. Parliament has 49.6, I believe, billion this year. Last year's budget, they had 44.6. It's almost an increment of just about 5 billion. Where is the austerity here? We know that quite a large chunk of Parliament's budget is travel. The same with the ministries, the same with State House. So maybe you reduce the travel budget in State House and then you do other, which doesn't tell us. I would want to be convinced that it is zero budgeting when the policy statement matches the itemized expenditure in the budget, and I don't see that. All right.
Would you consider this, or what would you consider to be a mwananchi budget in your views?
A budget that focuses on basic needs as articulated in Article 43, that makes access to health universal. Because when you make it universal, you really are pulling up the vulnerable, those who cannot afford other means other than public, health care. You make education universal. We are defunding education rather than increasing the funding and making it easier for the people. I would want to see an expanded social support, because so many people are now below the poverty line. I would like to see less taxation for the digital spaces. They're calling it significant significant presence, online presence, and which is indiscriminate taxation for the big boys like Meta, but also for the unemployed youth who have found something to do, whether content creators or, people on TikTok, on Instagram, and all that. Our unemployed youth have found something to do online, electronically. These are the people we are going for indiscriminately. They are not giving any threshold. I would like to see, I would not like to see excise duty removed on eggs, potatoes, and other items that are coming from other countries to flood our markets. You make it impossible for our farmers. I would like to see our farmers protected and more money spent on agriculture. I would like to see support and less taxation for SMEs. We keep on talking about investors. The largest investor is cumulatively all the SMEs put together. They are the most dependable because they do not go anywhere else. Even when they fail, they try the next day because they have no other alternative.
All right.
I would like to see investing in us more than investing in anybody else.
All right.
Yeah.
One of the areas that is being highlighted by experts is the deficit for financing the budget, which stands at around 870 billion. I don't know from where you sit, how do you think that should be tackled?
I think to begin with is cutting on an essential expenditure. And I started by pointing out, you see amounts in State House of 2 billion, which nobody explains. I don't know whether that is the money that is being used for people who go and cheer up Dr. William Ruto when he is touring, or the money being used by his deputy when he's going out and, mobilizing. What we are saying is that if you say zero budgeting, stick to it. And let us see rationalization of everything. We have not, I would also expect prioritization of things that matter to the people. You cannot tell us that it's Mwananchi's budget when you don't remember education, when access to health is not improved, and when you are trying to overtax the very people. There's nothing that shows you that there's tax increase. But when you are going after unemployed youth who are trying to get work on the internet, when you zero rate, when you remove zero rating and go to tax exempt, the tax is going to be pushed on to the consumer. And by the way, there is excise duty also on fuel, which is going to make transport more costly. It has ripple effects on many, many things. This year's budget is going to bite. And that's what people need to know. And for you to know that it's not a Mwananchi budget, it is the arrest of Rose Njoki. Why would you arrest a young Kenyan or any Kenyan at all who is just trying to enhance awareness and public participation? Ironically, arrested the weekend before public participation kicked off, which means that public participation is now a ritual. It is guided. It is only for people who are approved, not for everybody. And it means that really there's so much hidden in this year's budget and finance bill, which the William Ruto regime doesn't want the ordinary person to know.
All right.
Yeah.
Just around that, the issue of deficit, it is argued that the government might have to borrow money locally so that it can try to, meet the deficit. What does that mean for local investors?
What it means is that the government is competing with the local business people on access to loans from the bank. And the banks prefer the government because they lend them at higher rates. It means even the money that is available to business, the banks will also hike the interest rates. That is not the way to grow the economy. It's killing the economy. I'm saying in this year's budget, if it was zero budgeting, I would have expected all non-essential expenditure, the very top-heavy executive, it would have been trimmed. Remember that Dr. Ruto is having like 20 advisors. The ministers are having, cabinet secretaries are having advisors. Governors are having advisors. Some cannot even explain what each person is advising them on. These are the areas to cut the needless expenditure. And then we will not have a deficit. It cannot be zero budgeting and then you have a deficit.
All right.
And this budget, instead of austerity, I would declare that it's a cruelty budget meted out on Kenyans, where we continue to pamper a few political, the ruling elite, while overburdening and punishing in terms of lack of services, the ordinary person. Yeah.
All right. Finally, as a leader in the opposition, can we expect that perhaps you have a budget, an alternative budget that has been set aside, perhaps that looks like a Mwananchi budget?
We are still working on that, but even the comments we are giving an alternative that you would cut non-essential spending and focus only on the things that matter to the people. The suggestions I've given here are an alternative, and we will continue to make more. I do not speak for everyone because we have not made something jointly as yet, although our experts are looking at it. But I know each of my colleagues is looking at the budget, at the finance bill, and comments will be forthcoming. Yeah.
And just briefly, don't you think this is the right time perhaps to even have a shadow cabinet that would be checking on some of these things?
Yes, it is. And you'll see many things happening in the days to come.
All right.
Yeah, we are getting ready to show Kenyans that it's not just talk. We are actually ready to take over and govern,
All right.
as we must.
Thank you so much. Perhaps your final comment?
My final comment is that do not expect anything good from an executive that continues to lie to your face. Give apologies with tongue in cheek and then continue to arbitrarily arrest, detain, and punish those with dissenting voices or those who are not part of their choir. Do not expect anything good from an executive that thinks only about itself and is hell-bent on continuing with its plans even when Mwananchi protests. But let us all raise our voices. Your voice matters. My voice matters. Collectively, we will stop this extractive regime that is extracting the last drop of blood, the last coin, from people whose backs are already broken.
Thank you so much. And I know we will have more time to continue engaging in the future days. That has been PLP leader Martha Karua, who has been engaging us on this conversation, even as I take back to you and I hand it over back to you, Linda, to continue the conversation in studio.
Thank you so much, Kimani Ngunjiru, who is our Kameme TV presenter. Many thanks for speaking to us and engaging the PLP leader, Martha Karua. What do you make of that, Martha Karua's view, Bilo Kero, before we get to engage the concerns that you are talking to us about, Makalimuli?
Thank you, Linda. I think when you are in opposition, it's not very difficult to criticize government. And there's a very good question that the host asked regarding, do you have an alternative budget?
Yes, a shadow budget.
Do you have an alternative? Because it's easy to say some of these things. Because when you look at the way when Dr. William Ruto and his team were campaigning, the things they promised to do or pledged to do, but when they got to power, they realized some of those things are not workable. And they had to, you remember about the fuel, the VAT on fuel and many of the things that they pledged to do, because when you get into that office, then you realize that you have a government to run. There has to be money. Yeah. Everyone wants money. Every sector, that education wants money, that health wants money. So it becomes very difficult, and they have to make some choices and make some decisions. But I think I agree on some, for example, on the need for a zero-based budgeting, where you have to justify every expense. Yeah. You don't start from last year's budget. You take a pen and pencil and say, what do we need this year? But I tend to think that some of the things she said are not entirely correct. For example, education. It still receives the highest amount of money. You know, it's really, when you look at the total national government amount that Mheshimiwa Mulu mentioned, it's about 28%. When you look at the total 4.2, the 700 billion is about 16%. From in 2013, even during Kibaki's, when we started, and up to 2013, even when Uhuru came in, it was still around 12-14%. Yeah. So we are growing it. But I think there's no doubt, I mean, from what she said, which I agree with, that there's need to rationalize public expenditure. Yeah. I think it makes no sense when you have a huge public debt, and you have people who don't have resources, people who are not employed. Yeah. You continue expanding your budget expenditure. I think that's a concern for everyone. I think the government needs to find a way of rationalizing real expenditure so that we don't really squeeze Kenyans for more revenue and more revenue. But in terms of comparative with last year, obviously I think last year's budget was a different ballgame. Yeah. I don't think this compares anywhere near that, but there's no doubt that some of the measures will impact on the cost of living of Kenyans.
Yeah, and Steve, I remember during the public participation for stakeholders, during the finance bill public participation, you presented your proposals as a member of the task force for KEPSA. What were some of your concerns? Because even as we're speaking about the budget, we must also dig deeper into what's happening with the finance bill.
The recommendations that we made this year are actually a rollover from recommendations that have been made over the past several years. And if you are to analyze these issues correctly, you have to do a proper analysis from all the way from 2010, how we've conducted the analysis, coming all the way to the present period. There are recommendations that we've made, for example, for VAT refunds to be securitized, so that those who are owed money by the government, about 150 billion or Kenya shillings, is owed to the private sector, to the businesses that are operating in this country. You can imagine the cash flow implication on ordinary businesses. And the present mechanism by Kenya Revenue Authority, by paying about 3 billion shillings per month and sometimes not paying for some months, is just not
They haven't paid the last 3 months.
They haven't paid. Yeah. So this kind of recommendations we came to then with a view to ease the cash flow pressure on businesses that is leading them to borrow. But I'd like to go to the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter is not even based on the recommendations that we made this year or last year or the year before last year. We have two cardinal problems in the budget and fiscal policy or space in this country. One of them is that we have a huge appetite for resources. The government is a huge spending machinery, and we need to bring it under control. If you look at Kenya's budget, it's larger than Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Burundi put together. And compared to our population and the benefits that they get from their governments vis-a-vis what we get, it's not really justified. We have a distended or expenditure, and this is something that we have to bring under control. Bringing it under control is not going to be a one-time measure, and it's not going to be a quick fix. It cannot be a quick fix. It has to be a deliberate process, a program that is put in and actually driven, and it can't happen overnight. It can't happen in 1 year or even 2 years. There are certain measures that we proposed There's a task force that is cutting down, or that is looking into the cutting down of government expenditure under the leadership of the PCS and under the National Treasury. And we've given recommendations to that committee.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've asked that be cut out completely is programs of the government that don't provide any value for money, or the value that they provide is not sufficient. We don't need to spend money on those. So the first line of cutting that we've recommended is that just cut out departments and programs and agencies that are no longer providing value for money for Kenyans. That's the first line.
Yeah.
Just cut out that which is not beneficial. Whether there is corruption there, or it is very clean, or the audit report is in order, if it is not providing value, let it go. That is the first order.
Yeah.
The second order that we've recommended for the cutting is that which is duplication and redundancies. You find county government is undertaking that particular function. National government is also duplicating in that particular role. Other agencies are also participating in that particular role. This is a second layer of cutting. Duplication and redundancies to also go. The third layer, which is what normally captures media attention.
How many layers did you have?
There are 5 layers.
So before you get into the third layer, we get into the third layer, remember we are live also on Kameme TV, and we have Mumbi Chege on the other side together with panelists. Mumbi, I don't know if you can hear me. What do you have for us?
Good evening. I think I'm going to take it over fast before Mumbi Chege comes in with her guest. Thank you so much, Linda. That is Linda Koskei in Studio A with her guest. And in Studio B, we have Mumbi Chege also with hers too. And right here in Studio C, dear viewer, you are my guest tonight. And now listen, the 2025-2026 budget is in the offing and is set for reading on Thursday, the 12th of June. Now, it is the third reading under President William Ruto's regime, and he says it is the best budget yet. But is this true? I'd like to invite you to take part in this conversation tonight, because this is about our country. It is about our future. And so tonight we ask you this question: is the budget easing the burden or worsening the pain? Is the budget easing the burden or worsening the pain? I'm very eager to sample some of your comments or what you have to say across our social media platforms. That is on X and Facebook at K24TV and Kameme TV. Or even still, you can text us on our SMS line and WhatsApp numbers that are scrolling at the bottom of your screen. Is the budget easing the burden or worsening the pain? That is our question of the day tonight. And as you continue texting or interacting with us on our social media platforms, as I have mentioned, Facebook and X at Kameme TV and at K24 TV, allow me right now cross over to Studio B, where we have Mumbi Chege with her lineup of guests ready to continue with this wall-to-wall broadcast about the budget of 2025. My colleague Mumbi Wambugu, over to you. Mumbi Chege, beg your pardon, over to you.
Indeed, Theo, thank you for making that correction. It is Mumbi Chege. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. And is the budget easing the burden? Easing the burden or worsening the pain? We are focusing on President Ruto's budget for financial year 2025-2026. He says it is the best budget yet, but a lot of dissatisfaction from Kenyans, ordinary Kenyans in various sectors. And tonight with me to delve deeper in this conversation, or to continue with the conversation, is Professor Vincent Ongore, who is a scholar in public finance as well as in corporate governance. Thank you so much, Prof, for being here tonight. We also have Bernard Njiri, who is a senior research analyst at IPF. Thank you so much, Bernard for being here tonight. We also have Charlotte Kibet, who is the founder of The Big Talk. Charlotte, thank you so much. Lady and gentlemen, for making time for us here tonight. We're going to pick it up from what party leader for PLP, Martha Karua, said, that indeed this budget is worse than last year's budget. Prof, do you hold the same sentiments?
Thank you, Mumbi. I listened keenly to Martha Karua.
Right.
And I think she has some points that resonate with us, but I don't necessarily agree with some of it. You remember last year, the Finance Bill 2024-2025 had proposed additional 360 billion revenue from taxation raising measures that were actually scuttled by the Gen Zs.
Yeah.
But this was coming on the backdrop of a burgeoning, debt portfolio, especially the offshore, burden, the offshore burden that Kenya has been facing for several years now. As we talk now, over 7.1 shillings out of every 10 shillings of our, ordinary revenue being customs duty, income tax, VAT, and excise, goes towards paying repayment of debt.
Right.
And that leaves us with hardly 2.9, 2.8 shillings in every 10 bob to underwrite our, development and recurrent expenditure. So the government finds itself in between a rock and a hard place.
Right.
When they increase, tax raising measures, the Gen Zs are on their back, telling them you can't. If they don't, Kenya tinkers towards, the precipice, where we actually coming face to face with the possibility of actually defaulting on our loans, especially
Right.
Offshore loans. And this has implications for our own reputation as a country and our sovereignty and all those things, And so we are in a terrible situation.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. Let's get Njeri's thoughts on this. Mr. Njeri, when you compare what has been allocated in various sectors, for instance, education, health, and what has been allocated for various offices or various arms of government, for instance, Parliament, I think it's 47.9 billion as it stands now. How do you make of that comparison? Where are our priorities?
Thank you, Mobi, for that question. And I would like to say that I have listened to that soundbite where the president is saying this is the best budget, okay? And I want to marry my response. In my response, I want also to respond to some of the very pertinent issues that Martha Karua has touched on.
Right.
So when the president says this is the best budget ever, and then there is another question whether this is a Mwananchi budget. And then when responding to this, I want to say a Mwananchi budget should be the one that is reducing poverty and inequality in this country.
Right.
A budget that has a significant share being allocated to social spending in health, education, social protection, so that we can cushion the vulnerable who are already pushed to the wall by hard economic times. Now, you have asked whether we have allocated adequate resources to our critical programs. And from our analysis, the answer is no, because as we speak, you are aware UHC health workers are on strike.
Right.
And they need maybe about 8 billions or thereabout, for them to be put at the PNP. So as we speak, who is suffering? It's the common Mwananchi, because the common Mwananchi cannot access the best, Medicare services in our hospitals. Now, how much have we allocated to the health sector in the 2025-26 financial year.
Right.
You know, I have led the Budget and Appropriations Committee, the report that was uploaded. And remember, this is a report that is coming after the public has given its inputs, or we have already given our submissions through memoranda and, you know, through the views that were collected in 11 counties. And to be honest, this is not what the public submitted, that health should only be allocated an additional 1.3 billion, you know. And let me tell you, in the budget policy statement, health had been allocated 204 billion. Then it was reduced to 137 billion. Then Budget and Appropriations Committee has recommended 138 billion to the health sector. So that's barely 1.3 billion increment. That's not even enough to absorb the UHC workers. So is the government really committed to universal health coverage in this country?
Yeah.
The answer is no.
Okay.
Let me now touch on the issue of education. Education had an allocation of 701 billion in the program-based budget for the 25-26 financial year. It has been retained as that. And remember, it's coming at a time when basic education has a budget cut, and parents are, you know, crying about the capitation. We have issues like
the feeding program.
The feeding program and the examination fee.
Issue.
So what that will translate into is that we, you know, immediately we pass the budget is read, you know, this month, 2 months or 1 month after, we expect a supplementary budget. And that's where the biggest mess comes in, because resources are reallocated. Let me finish by saying it's not a Mwananchi budget because Parliament has proposed, the back report has proposed an increment of 5 billion to the budget for Parliament, from 42 billion
to 47.
To 47 billion.
Thank you so much,
and lastly,
Mr. Njiri. We're going to take a short break. We're going to pick it up from there.
Okay.
Let's just take a short break. Charlotte, we're also going to be getting your views. We are focusing on the budget for financial year 2025-2026. We want to get your views on this. This is the People Dialogue here on Kameme TV as well as K24. Let's take a short break. Don't go anywhere.
Kameme TV, Muthegi Waruriri.
This is the comfort of a mom's hug. Nahi ni Morphix Spans comfort that feels just like a mom's hug. Babies play around and then, oops, Morphix ina absorb like whoop. Imagine haiwezi lick in 50 different movements. Makofi to both babies and Morphix. Renewed Morphix, ultimate quality.
Naitwa Mama Masi. Naitwa Elizabeth Jambi. Nafanyanga kazi ya kufua. Nimekuwa mama fua kwa miaka 16. Nimefanya for 3 years. Wazazi wangu hawakupata pesa ya kunisomesha kwenda shule ya upili. So nikaanza kibarua ya kufua nguo. Napenda kazi yangu juu ndio nategemea. Na nafurahianga juu hiyo ndio inafanya napata kile kitu yenye nataka, kwa nikipata pesa ndio watoto wangu wanakulia hapo. Nimekuwa na challenge wakati nimekuwa nikifua. Unajua ukienda kwa wakati umepewa kibarua utapata sabuni tofauti. Na mtu amekuita amekuambia nda kulipa kiasi hii ya pesa, lakini ukienda utapata mtu amekuletea nguo nyingi. Sasa hiyo ndio challenge inanipata. Sasa kama nilikuwa nimemuitisha 1000 naenda napata hizo nguo ni nyingi. About ushindi, napenda kwa maana hainichimbui mikono. Juu sabuni zingine nikitumia kwa kufua, huwa inanichimbua mkono, napatwa na vidonda. Inakuwa ni ngumu kwa sababu kesho yake pia nafaa kuamka niende kwa client mwingine. Wale wa mama wengine wale wanafua wanafanya kibarua kama mimi ya kufua nguo kama mama fua. Mimi naweza wa advise kwa hii sabuni. Hii sabuni inakuanga mzuri sana. Haichimbui mtu mkono. Kama nguo iko na stain yake inatoka haraka. Unasigua tu alafu inatoka tu. Hautumii sabuni mingi. Ukipaka tu kidogo hivi pofu yake iko nyingi. Unaweza tumia for 2 weeks hivi. Iko na nguvu zaidi, inanukia vizuri na iko na pofu mingi na uchoki sana kuitumia. Hata wamama wenzangu na waelimisha watumie hii sabuni. Kuna wadosi fulani nimeenda nikawaambia sabuni ile mzuri iko na pofu ni sabuni ya Ushindi, na wamefurahia sabuni yenyewe. Ushindi inatosha. Ushindi inatosha hii hapa.
Kabla nichukue simu yako, wacha nikwambie. Ile mawe ambayo ilikataliwa na wajenzi, nimeipata leo. Nimeenda kuuma dengu. Nimeuma kamawe na mwasikia uchungu. Nikajua, haya, kumbe ile mawe ilikataliwa na wajenzi na kwa ndani ya dengu. Mwasikia uchungu.
Ili kuset mawe kwa ndengu kama sikiza tune yako, dial *811*616#.
This June, the biggest Club World Cup ever held is here. The 2025 FIFA Club World Cup. Recharge your subscription on your current bouquet for 2 months and get upgraded free to the next high bouquet for 60 days. A competition across the continents. 30 action-packed days of top-notch football from 32 best club teams from around the world.
The pressure coming down! Jesus. Oh, it's magnificent!
Recharge your subscription today to never miss a moment of a competition like never before. On the move, download StarTimes on and watch every goal, every moment, anytime, anywhere. StarTimes Sports. Beyond passion. StarTimes. Enjoy digital life.
Naeza kuwa sina godfather, sina any support system, lakini kwa uwezo wake Mwenyezi Mungu, in one way or the other, one day one time, mambo yangu itakuja kuwa sawa. One day one time.
Kwegwatira skize tune one day one time. Hihinya *811 *227 hasha. Wegwatira skize tune one day one time. Thimo-ini yaku umuthi *811 *227 hash. Ithuĩ tũtigweterera mahiga mamũinĩre nĩ amu tũkũmũgoca o rĩu twĩna hinya na mĩhũmũ. Gĩkĩ nĩkĩo kĩgoco. Ũkai rĩu na ndarama ona ciĩgamba nĩ amu nĩtũmũreheire kĩgoco gũkũ gwa Kameme TV. Nĩtũnyitanĩre o mũthenya wa gatano kwanjia thaa 4 cia ũtukũ na mũthenya wa kiumia kwanjia thaa 9 cia hwaĩ-inĩ. Kĩgoco live bar nĩtũmũgoce ta Daudi nginya ciohoke. Kameme TV, mũthĩgi wa rũrĩrĩ.
Right, thank you so much for staying with us here on the People Dialogue here on Kameme TV as well as K24. We are focusing on President Ruto's budget for financial year 2025-2026. And we continue with my panel tonight. Let's get to you, Charlotte Kibet. Yes. Mr. Njiri earlier mentioned about public participation. I mean, members of parliament have been going around getting views from Kenyans from 11 counties. Yeah. Do you think their views, you know, listening to Kenyans' dissatisfaction with this, were their views considered? The ordinary Kenyan, that small business owner, were their views considered?
I think most of the time the government, and particularly even the National Assembly, takes just this process as just, you know, this is just a formal process. Mumalizane Senate or National Assembly, it has too many legalist terms. The average Kenyan does not understand when you say thou, thee, shall, all of those things. Right. So my position and what I do is basically create awareness, simplify bills, and make it easier for the normal mananchi